I don't remember exactly how I found out about this game. I think I just randomly got it one day when my granddad brought over a bunch of copied games as he did. And this is a game that I kind of saw coming, as in it's part of a series that I thought that there would be another entry to this series. And what's quite funny is that in a way I had some imaginations as to what this game would be like, and although some of them obviously weren't true, what's quite surprising is that some of them actually were, and it's rather strange. But the game I'm talking about is Crash Bandicoot Warped, also known as Crash 3 because it's the third game in the series. But yes, one of the things that I imagined about this game before having played it or seen it at all is I imagined for some reason that Crash would be controlled through tank controls, and you would access levels by stepping on this series of buttons, and you would step on a button and from that button you would jump into the portal and that would take you to that level. And that part actually ended up being true. You do access levels in the warp room by jumping on buttons and then jumping into the portal after having stepped on the button, which is very, very strange. But I don't know exactly why I had this idea that Crash would be controlled with tank controls. I think maybe I was just of a mindset that because it's a later game in the series it would require more exploration and therefore be more advanced or something. I mean, I was very young at the time, so you can kind of excuse those sort of thoughts, I guess. But a lot of the formula is kept basically the same from Crash 2, and there is one thing I actually like about Crash 2 that I don't like as much about Crash 3, and that is that I feel Crash 3 has a little bit too much in terms of weirdness. And what I mean by that is that Crash 3 has levels such as the levels where you're in a plane, or the racing levels, kind of levels that don't really have anything to do with what Crash is known for, and I saw that as a downside. But the format is incredibly similar to how it is in Crash 2. It's presented differently in that this time, instead of having a series of warp rooms with 5 different doors, instead you have one warp room with 5 different paths that lead out to a set of levels, and it's the same story here. You have 5 levels and you can go and get the crystal for each of those levels, then you get access to the boss, and then you unlock the next set of 5 levels. And the same rules also apply with the colour gems as well, and the normal gems, that being that you get the normal box gem by smashing all of the boxes in a level, and there's also going to be extra gems that you can find in strange and unique ways. But again, the colour gems, the ones that require you to go out of your way and do strange things, they are still there. And once again, we still have the secret warp room, that being an extra area with a few levels that will grant you access to more gems and some more levels as well. So nice little hidden secret levels. But there are a few things I want to talk about that make this distinctively different from Crash 2, and what I think puts it that step above Crash 2. And I've said before that Crash 2 is a brilliant platform, and if someone wanted to ask me what I think is a really good example of a 3D platforming game, I would say Crash 2. And the same applies here, although maybe I'd add a bit of caveat to that in that there's a bit less with the platforming, but I still think it's a better game overall for the following reasons. For one, when you defeat the bosses you get extra powers, and this adds a bit of extra variety to the level design. So for example, you beat the first boss, you get the extra body slam attack, which is where once you land the body slam it causes this rippling effect outwards. And you also have the double jump, the super spin, which will allow you to glide through the air. You have the Wumpa Fruit Bazooka, so you can hit things from a distance. And the last power up is the super speed, and this is important because one of the main extra elements of Crash 3 is that as well as the crystals and the gems, you also have the relics. Now the relics are something extra to this game, where once you've completed a level, once you've gotten a crystal on a level, if you go back into the level you can then access the time trial mode, and if you pick up the clock at the start of the level then a timer will start ticking. And a lot of the boxes change to timer boxes where you can smash a box, if it has number 2 on it it'll freeze the clock for 2 seconds, or it might be 1 or 3 for 1 second or 3 seconds, and the idea is to complete the level in as fast as time as possible. Now there is the regular relic, if you beat it within a certain time frame. But also there's the gold relic if you manage to beat it in a even stricter time frame, and then there's the platinum relic, which you only get if you beat it really, really fast. And I don't think I've ever gotten all of the platinum relics. In fact, I very much doubt that I have. And I have on a few occasions tried to sort of cheat this mode where you can just run forward, kill a few enemies to get them out of the way, then run back to get the clock so that it becomes easier, but that doesn't work. They've taken that into account. But what's great is that you can do this at any time, but if you get the speed up ability at the end of the game, that really helps you. And so it adds this extra layer of stuff to do for this game, and I've got to say, I think that this game is an excellent game. Oh yes, and I should probably add, this is one of the very rare occasions where I was actually able to find an Easter egg in this game. On one of the jet ski levels, where you play as Coco, that's one thing I probably should have mentioned, that you can play as Coco. Not that it really matters, because you only really play as her through non-strictly platforming levels, but anyway. Yeah, in one of these levels where you are playing as Coco, you can find the fake Bandicoot, and there is a story behind this fake Bandicoot, and it was put there as an Easter egg. It's basically this character that looks like Crash, but if memory serves me right, he has giant eyebrows and massive teeth or something like that, and he's just there. And I remember finding him whilst playing the game and just thinking, whoa, hold on, who's that? What's this? And I remember just like being there for ages, trying to interact with him in some way and not being able to, and just being utterly confused as to what this character was doing. But yeah, that's a bit of a funny extra, I suppose. So this game was introduced to me by my friend Josh, and what actually happened was he described this game to me, but I didn't really understand it, and I wasn't particularly interested either. But this is perhaps his favourite game of all time, or possibly second favourite game of all time. But I borrowed this game from him for a while, and he borrowed a game from me, and I got to play it. And I remember one day showing him my progress, and he was saying like, you're missing out this, you're missing out that, go here, go there, do this, do that. And he was basically saying that I'm doing terrible. Meanwhile, he was playing the game that I let him borrow, and he was doing fantastically. He was having all of the luck. But enough about that. The game I'm talking about is, and I'm probably going to change the pronunciation of this game every time I say it, but actually, I'll just say it how he said it this time. This game is Suikoden. So he calls it Suikoden, so I'm just going to call it Suikoden in this instance. I know I've talked about Suikoden 5 and 4, and I've sort of messed around with the pronunciations, but yeah, I'm just going to call it Suikoden. But this is basically where it all starts. Obviously, it's the first game in the series, and it's an RPG, got random battles and turn-based combat and all that. And the main feature of this game is that you have a lot of characters. That's like the big factor, and you have to recruit all these different characters to help you on your journey. Some of them help you in certain ways, some of them provide services for you in your main base, some of them you can fight with in combat, and others are just there as part of the story, I guess, as part of something to do. But yes, there are a lot of characters. And combat-wise, what mostly differentiates each of the characters are their stats. There are some with their own unique abilities, which I'll get into in a moment, but generally speaking, each character has their own theme about them, and when you think about a thing that you can do in an RPG, this game allocates those things to different characters. So relatively early on in the game, you will find this tower, and that will become your home base before you set out to go and gather reinforcements. And you interact with different people, and you try to do things to get them on your side, and there's also loads of missable opportunities, which, as you probably know, I really hate that. But there's all these different missable opportunities where you won't be able to get a certain character if you miss out on a particular event. But I will give you an example of what a character can do outside of combat. And this can range from anything from the silly, which is the characters that do very minor things, such as the character Window, who can't really do anything apart from allow you to change your menu layout options. And you also have characters like Meese and Moz and all that who allow you to upgrade your weapons whilst in your home base. And then you have the character Mace, who is the best at that, who can upgrade weapons to their fullest. Combat wise, you have 3 characters in the front row and 3 characters in the back row. Each character has a short, long or medium range weapon. So if they have a short range weapon, they have to be in the front row to attack, but only can attack the front row of enemies. Medium means that they can get anything from the front or only the front row from the back, and long range means they can attack any enemy from any place. They also have their own set stats, which is expected, and MP is also in that 4-tier setup where you equip each character with a rune. Some characters have specific runes for them, which may grant you special abilities in terms of passive skills, such as Stallion, which will allow you to run faster on the world map. But also you have ones that are combat based, and each has 4 tiers, and each tier of ability on that rune will cost 1 charge of that particular stage of MP. And so you have characters where they have runes specific to them, and characters where they don't have that specific rune. You can give them a new one or swap them round with ones that you can find and all that. So whilst a lot of the characters combat wise seem to be very similar, there is enough slight difference that there is enough to really consider for when you're deciding on your party and who you are going to focus on. A big issue that I do have with this game, and this is something that I've kind of touched on in the past, but this is a perfect example of where the experience distribution is rather messed up. So, for example, I'll explain how this works. Every character, it takes 1,000 experience to level up between each level, but the amount of experience you gain depends on how high your level is. So if you're a higher level, you will only gain a small amount of experience compared to a lower level character. Here's the problem though, the amount of experience that you get does not take into account levels that you have grown. So say you gain enough experience to level up, you will still continue to get experience from that battle as if you were that initial level. It won't recalculate and redistribute the experience if you level up in a particular battle. And so what usually happens is when you start the game, you are level 1 and you're very weak, and only a very small set of enemies can be killed by your main character. But you can sort of find a trick way to go about it. You can go to a certain place if you don't have any battles along the way, gamble loads of money so you can get loads of money, then walk to this faraway town, bribing all the enemies along the way so you don't have to fight them, and if you go there alone, you will get the fortune rune, which will, when equipped, give that character double experience. You can then use that and use all that money to upgrade your weapons and go into a fight with the fortune rune equipped that would usually be quite hard for you at level 1 that you wouldn't be able to do, but because you've done all this and you can do it, and because you're level 1, you will gain enough experience to get to level 27. It's completely out of whack. There's no way you should get that much experience from that fight, but that's the way it is. The story behind how I got this game is quite interesting because I basically got this game on a whim and I didn't expect to like this game as much as I did. Basically, it was my birthday and I don't know how old I would have been, somewhere in the mid-teens, and what my dad did, which you could say it's kind of lazy, but you know, it was fine for me, is instead of just saying, here's a present, he said, right, we're going to go to Game, which is a game shop in the UK. He said, right, we're going to go to Game and you can pick something out and I'll get it for you, right? And so we went to Game and I was looking around and I was thinking, oh, I don't know. I saw this game and I just thought, that looks alright. So I said, I'll have this one. Little did I know that I would really like this game, and little did I know that this would turn out to be a pretty rare game in the long run, but the game that I got was Shadow Hearts. Yes, this is a very dark game and it's very gloomy. And most of what Shadow Hearts is known for is Shadow Hearts 2, or at least it seems to be that way. And I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe it's just not as rare, maybe more people played it. But I'm talking about the original Shadow Hearts here. And the game does cover adult themes, and it did have a rather macabre vibe to it. It had, for example, near the beginning, there's this village and there's skulls everywhere and there's blood and demons and all that sort of stuff. But I knew I was into RPGs and it looked like an RPG, so I think that's probably why I got it in the first place. But I will describe how this game works. So you have the main character, who is called Yuri, and he is a harmonixer, which means he can transform into demons. You can unlock and upgrade your demons by going to the graveyard, but also you'll need to go to the graveyard every now and then because the malice will turn different colours and you want to make sure that it doesn't fully turn red, so you have to go back to refresh that every so often. And transforming will basically grant you with different abilities, and transforming costs SP to use. SP is sort of like this really strange resource called sanity points. That's what SP stands for, and every action that you take will reduce your SP by 1. It refreshes at the end of every battle, but the idea is you don't want to spend too long in a single battle because your characters will run out of SP, then they'll start attacking each other and all that, and you don't want that. Yuri actually gains SP as he progresses, and transforming using these fusions costs SP to use, so he works slightly different in that regard. And characters do learn abilities in a very simple fashion. It is mostly just when you level up, and the pool of abilities that each character can learn is overall very small. But the other big feature that a lot of people like to point to with this game is the judgment ring. Now, I feel that I need to point something out here. I say, and I always say, that the idea of adding little actiony mechanics to turn-based games is mostly just a gimmick. It's there to make people think, oh, well, I have more control, which is a nonsense thought, but that's generally what people think. Like with the Paper Mario games, people think that they have more control in Paper Mario, which I think is ridiculous, but that's what people think. And it's the same with Lost Odyssey as well. When you attack, you have to hold down a button for so long and then release at the right time to do a more powerful attack. Oh, so immersive, so interactive. But you see, this game, Shadow Hearts, is a lot better at that. I'll explain. Every action that you do, you will have to use the judgment ring. And the judgment ring is this little circle, and there's this bar that spins round in just one full cycle, and you have to press X at the right time. So for example, when you attack, you have to press X in the coloured segments in order to land your attack. Within each coloured segment, the end of the coloured segment is a slightly different colour. So in this case, it's orange for the main part and red for the end bit. If you manage to hit in the red segment, that's kind of like a critical hit. So you have to measure up the risk and the reward. This also applies to special abilities as well. You'll have special abilities where it's like you have to hit all of the blue segments, and then you'll have this green segment, and if you hit it in the green segment, then you have succeeded, but there's a little red bit at the end where it'll be more effective. And items are exactly the same. But what also is interesting is that on top of all that, there is even another added layer of different status effects which can affect the ring itself. So it might close up the gaps, or it might make the bar go twice as fast, or it might make it visibly smaller. There's a lot of different and weird status effects that can change all that, and this includes a boss that one of its attacks is to cause your controller to vibrate, which actually puts you at a slight disadvantage, and that is very interesting. And so it's not just a simple QuickTime event, there is actually a set of layers upon this, and they've actually added an element of strategy to this whole system. The main memory I have about this game, apart from the day that I got it, is the day that I completed it, because I remember, I think it would have been 2007, so a few years maybe after I got the game, but I remember just thinking to myself, I'm going to play through Shadow Hearts, and over the course of maybe 3.5 days. I completed it and it took me nearly 40 hours, so I just remember spending those days just sat playing this game constantly. Also, one thing to point out about this game, which is quite unusual for an RPG, is that it takes place in the real world. You actually have places like Japan and Transylvania and places that actually exist.